let's start with the first page of our handout, which I think everybody has. And that is, what is the coronavirus? And the coronavirus is a family of viruses. And it seems from evidence that these coronaviruses begin in animals and then jump to human beings. And then once they're in a human being, they're transmitted from human to human. Okay? And we're going to see the types of animals that are suspected. All right, the type that are suspected are kind of strange animals, actually. All right? For example, bats, civet cats, pangolins, they're all very strange, and they have a kind of very strange yin and yang quality, which we'll look at. All right? Then let me ask you then, what is the difference between a virus and a bacteria? This is very important in terms of yin and yang, so we know how we can begin to solve this problem. So who would like to volunteer that answer, which is yin and yang? Anybody, please speak up.
Bacteria are organisms.
What's that, Donna?
It's Karen. Bacteria are organisms.
Yeah, bacteria are actually living things, where virus is not, right? Correct?
Right.
And also, if you look at the handout, you can see the differences. The one is the causing a more systemic infection throughout the body. The other is the usually more localized. So when you have an abscess tooth, what is that, guys? Virus or bacteria? Abscess tooth. Bacteria. Yeah, and it's very localized. Whereas the COVID-19 coronavirus affects entire systems, such as the respiratory system especially. All right, body-wide. Same thing, herpes simplex virus, body-wide. HIV is body-wide. Then second consideration is the response to antibiotics. So of the two, which one is the neutralized by antibiotics? Which
Bacteria.
one is? Yeah. Which one has no reaction?
Viruses.
Yeah. So that's why the whole spectrum of antibiotics that modern medicine built up during the 20th century in response to bacterial pandemics has no effect, is not useful at all with the COVID-19. Or was it useful with AIDS or any of the other viral infections of the 20th and 21st centuries? So let me ask you then, what is antibiotics? What are they? Are they yin or yang? And please explain this mechanism, the effectiveness with bacteria and ineffectiveness with virus. Please explain that in terms of very simple yin and yang. Why is that so? Anybody?
I would guess and say that they're yang because they're counteracting the spread of infection, which is yin.
All right. Donna, where do antibiotics... Donna's a registered nurse, as is Robin. Where do those antibiotics originate? Where are they from originally? Antibiotics.
Antibiotics?
Yeah.
From mold.
They're from mold and spores, right?
Yes.
And so you know when your bread goes moldy, those spores are very yin or yang, those things that mushroom.
They're very yin.
So antibiotics are very yin.
Yeah, but there's all different families of antibiotics. I don't know if that holds true.
It does hold true.
Okay.
Yeah, there are different degrees of yin and yang. But as a class, the antibiotics are more yin. When they're fed to livestock in the food industry, what is the purpose of that? For what purpose? To make the livestock do what? Besides fight infection.
Grow bigger.
Yeah, growth, to promote growth, okay? That's a yin factor. So going back to my question then, guys, how is it that antibiotics work with bacteria and don't work with virus? it must be showing us that one of the two is more yang, the other is more yin.
If bacteria is more yang and is counterbalanced by the yin medication, then a virus would be more yin, and it would need a yang treatment, which is not antibiotics.
Yeah, so you guys know very well that opposites react, right? Isn't it? Interact and react. Whereas likes, things that are similar in yin and yang balance, energy, don't react. Simply repel each other. So this is a very simple example of opposites attracting and reacting and likes repelling. So virus and antibiotics repel. Bacteria and antibiotics interact and create a reaction. And in this case, the power of the antibiotic is sufficient to offset and cancel out the yangness of the bacterium. And so the bacterium is killed. All right?
So would that make an antifungal medicine or an antiviral medicine more yin?
No, it must be
No.
more yang, Donna, to work against virus.
Okay.
All right? Always, you know this from our study. IMI guys know this very well. KI too. The medicine means what? What is the meaning of the word remedy or medicine? Same root. It means to give the opposite in order to pull the person or the symptom back towards the middle. So if something is extreme yin, you can't give extreme yin, you have to give yang, and that pulls the condition back towards the central region. Remediate, remedy. The word, the MED, media, or whatever, means middle. We've studied this before, we know this. Then let's go further. Let's see the next picture here, which is comparing microscopically the virus and bacteria. And what you're going to notice here is that the outer coating of the bacteria, the outer shell or skin, what is it called? The cell wall. Do you know what it's made up of in the case of bacteria? What the components are there making up the cell wall?
Lipids and carbohydrates?
Yeah, polysaccharides, carbohydrates, and fats.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what's the cell wall of the wall of the virus? This is what?
I don't know.
Protein. Protein. All right, so comparing the two, the carbohydrate and fat versus protein. Just looking at the pictures, which one gives you an impression of being more yang at the surface, and which one gives you an impression of being more yin at the surface? This is very interesting. This explains a lot. So even though we say, right, we say that the virus is yin as a whole, bacteria is yang as a whole, what are we talking about? At the surface or deep inside, guys? What do you think?
Deep inside.
Deep inside. The surface is actually the opposite. So the virus has a yang spiky, the surface, made up of hard protein, like a shell. Inside is kind of empty, and it's filled with genetic material. All right? Whereas the bacterium has a more softer, the lighter outer coating, but inside you have the cell wall and it's packed densely with material. So the inside is more dense or solid, something like hollow and solid organs that we studied in Oriental medicine. So when I was looking at the images of that virus, that coronavirus, you've seen the pictures, right? It's quite ugly, right? Right? What do you think, guys? It has like spikes coming out. It has like, at the end of the spikes, they look like suction cups, right? Like an octopus, right?
Yeah.
And I looked around and I found something in human invention that resembles it very much, resembles that virus. Can you imagine what that was? It was so obvious. Did you ever see World War II ocean mines?
Mm-hmm.
Mines are explosives designed to sink boats, right? Did you ever see those? Who's ever seen those?
No.
They're a sphere and they have spikes.
Yeah, the movies.
Yeah, okay. All those movies that Mark was watching growing up.
Right.
And okay. So what happens with a landmine? If a boat is going through the water and touches the outside spikes, right? What happens? Explosion goes, right?
Yeah.
So the outside of the landmine is made up of steel, iron, very young, just like the virus. Inside of the landmine is nitrogen explosive, which is very extremely volatile and yin. It's the same thing with the virus. The outside coat, or what do they call it? The cusp. I forget the name. The cuspid, something like that. The outside is hard. And once those spikes come in contact with the body cells, the cell wall, then something like an explosion happens. The virus is admitted to the cell and then releases like an explosion, like a landmine exploding, all of its genetic material into the cell. All right? And what happens from that point? Donna, you're a nurse. Tell us what happens once that's in there and the genetic material is now released into the human cell. What happens?
It attaches to other cells.
Not yet. The genetic material of the virus takes over the body's genetic material, DNA and RNA, and changes the signal and makes it start reproducing more viruses. Copying. Okay? Something like forces the body cell into producing more viruses. This is highly yin, guys. Can you see this? Reproducing hundreds, thousands of viruses. Then what happens to the cell? The cell then explodes and then releases these next generation viruses to go out into the body and then do the same thing over and over again. So can you see that process is explosively yin? All right? Explosively yin. On the whole. On the whole. All right? So that's the basic mechanism. By the way, it's very interesting because the yang surface of the virus, those yang spikes coming out, these are attaching to the more yin cell membrane in the body cells. The yin and yang are attracting. And that facilitates the entry of that yin material, genetic material, into the cell. Very similar to the way insulin facilitates glucose passing through the cell membrane. Okay? So that's how it works. But as you know, as you're well aware, we have yin and yang everywhere, always dividing. So that means within the realm of viruses, there are yin varieties and more yang varieties as a whole. And within bacteria, you know we have gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria, yin and yang, right? Two different kinds. So how can we determine then where on that spectrum within the world of viruses this COVID-19 virus, novel coronavirus is located? How can we tell, guys? What are some of the things, the clues that we need to figure this out if we're on the trail of this? What do you think, Sarah? What do we need?
Well, I don't know. I'm thinking about how quickly it spreads.
That's part of it, yes. How it
And,
behaves, right?
But what's interesting to me is how it behaves so differently in different people. But I'm guessing that that's dependent upon each individual's condition.
Exactly. Okay, the host, the so-called host, right? So here's what we use to figure it out, guys. Please listen carefully. The first is the origin, where it comes from. Okay? Second is how it behaves. So please see here, can you all see on the second page, the image? Hi, Mary Ellen.
Hi, Ed.
We have 3 nurses here. I feel much better already. In case one of us needs resuscitation during the class, the staff is here.
Cyber resuscitation.
And okay, so we're talking about virus and bacteria. And Mary Ellen, just to bring you up, the virus is more yin as a class. Bacterians are more yang as a class, but that is based on the internal contents. The surface or shell of the bacteria is the more yin, softer, made of carbohydrate and fat. The outer shell of the virus is made up of hard protein. So it's the opposite on the surface than it is on the center, in the inner part. All right, now please see the respiratory system, guys. Most of these viruses are what we call airborne. Not all, but many of them are airborne. That means they're carried through the air, and we inhale them, isn't it? So that means which of our systems is in the front line of the inhaled virus, guys? Front line is which of our system?
Lungs.
Lung and respiratory system.
Respiratory
Right?
system.
So that's where the action is, right? That's where the action happens. That's where the body tries to meet and respond to the virus on site in that respiratory tract. In other words, that's where the body's immune system is mobilized and starts to do the work, okay, of neutralizing the virus. So, how do we determine this? Whether yin or yang? Well, we have the upper respiratory system. What is that, Mary Ellen? Comprised of what?
It's more yin, the sinuses.
So head, right?
Yeah,
Head. Even the inner ear is connected, right?
right.
Okay. And then you have the lungs in the lower section. So what I would recommend you do, guys, is use your drawing here and draw a line across, horizontal line, dividing upper and lower, please. Maybe where, at what level, Mary Ellen? Maybe where the trachea divides
Right.
the two bronchi. Maybe draw a line there. All right? And as you know from studies in level 2, we studied bronchitis and pneumonia, right? Which was yin, which was yang. And why is that? Who would like to remember that from our studies? Bronchitis was what? Yin or yang compared to pneumonia?
Or yin.
More yin.
Bronchitis is more yin, right? Right? Because it's more toward the outside. You see what I'm saying? Whereas deep inside, we have the air sacs. Okay? And that's where pneumonia takes place. Deep within the lung tissue itself. So again, please draw the line there and draw an arrow pointing up and an arrow below the line pointing down. And please write yin for the upper arrow and yang for the lower arrow. Okay? All right? So, that's one way of seeing. The other way of seeing is how severe the symptoms are. In other words, whether they're mild or whether they're severe. Okay? So what would you venture to guess, guys? Mild symptoms that you almost just brush off as an inconvenience, right, caused by virus, or very serious symptoms that require attention, such as COVID-19, if it becomes serious, or SARS, right, which is related to COVID-19. So which would you say is more yin, which is more yang? Mild symptom or severe symptom? What do you think? We've all had these experiences. We know many times already.
Less symptoms, more yin.
Yeah, the more mild symptoms, right? More yin, more deep or long-lasting or serious symptoms are more yang, okay? So I illustrate that further on the next page. Things that we are very familiar with. And here you can see the very common cold, that's why it's called the common cold, and the flu. So what is the statistic? Nurses, Donna, help me out. What is the U.S. statistic per year?
Is it on that sheet? I
How
don't
many
have
are
that
getting-
handout, so I don't know.
Well, I'm asking you, what is the incidence of the flu in
Donna,
America?
I sent it to you.
I didn't get it.
All right.
I don't know the incidence of flu.
Millions, right?
Of course,
Yes.
yes, throughout the country.
Yeah. And maybe many of you had the flu. You remember the flu?
Yeah, in our lives. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, we've had many colds, right? Which we tend to brush off. Colds are not that serious.
Yeah.
So we can tell, right? Here's the difference. The cold usually lasts about a week. Okay. Main symptom, runny nose and sneezing. So this is obviously upper or lower, guys.
Upper.
Headache, upper, sore throat, generally a light cough, some achiness also, right? Then let's contrast that. The flu, more serious, high fever. There's not necessarily a fever with the cold, right? Would you say that, guys?
Right.
Right.
All right. High fever is what? Yin or yang?
Yin.
No. High fever is yang, heat.
Fever coming out.
Yeah. Well, you're discharging it, of course. It's radiating, but the source is more yang. Dry cough. Where is that originating? From where?
Bottom of your lungs.
Yep, down, further down. Aching throughout the lower body is pain is much worse. And it can last much longer. And it can, in some cases, for people who have compromised immunity, can be a very serious episode, in some cases fatal. All right, so can you see how we're looking at that criteria? The cold virus is mild in the upper body, whereas the flu is much deeper in the lower body, going towards the lungs and producing much more deep yang symptoms, okay? Although, as you can see in the center there, both are the result of a virus, okay? So again, viruses are dividing. Slightly more yin, slightly more yang. Okay? Any question about that so far, guys? Before we go on to COVID-19.
Can you
I'm sorry, please?
can you have the flu that doesn't last for a long time? Because generally when I get sick with a cold, I get a intense fever. Like, I don't think it's super high, but I might have really intense aches and maybe and cold and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So how do you draw the line?
You have a combination of both, Karen.
Okay.
And if your immune system is good, then it doesn't progress. It doesn't become serious. You deal with it fairly rapidly, right?
Yeah, that's usually what happens.
Yeah. So we have to add a third category, and that is combination, cold and flu both, happening both at the same time. All right, but the tendencies are there, and they're definitely opposite tendencies. You can see them very clearly. All right, now what about COVID-19? All right, what about SARS? All right, SARS is also a very serious respiratory condition. And COVID-19 is also very serious, can be serious, although for many people it's mild. So what does that mean, serious? Mary Ellen, then, what are the complications of this COVID-19 if it progresses? Is it going towards yin or towards yang, do you think, COVID-19?
Towards yang.
Yeah. What happens? What is the symptom, guys? What is the danger?
Respiratory problems like failure, might need to be in the respirator for a while.
Yeah, pneumonia is the main problem, right? Pneumonia, viral pneumonia, which is very deep within the lung. And I'm assuming that's accompanied by high fever, Mary Ellen, right?
Yeah.
And then all of the complications that come from that. Pneumonia used to be one of the leading causes of death in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Especially bacterial pneumonia in that case. And that's why antibiotics were so successful, right, at stopping that, taking care of that.
Right.
But this is viral pneumonia, so antibiotics are not effective. Okay? So from the behavior of this coronavirus, COVID-19, same thing, it's cousin SARS, which is similar, even more serious symptoms with SARS, right? Did you know? More acute. This is by all analyses, this is more yang among viruses.
Which
The
one?
ones that get- What's that now?
Which one is more young? SARS?
SARS is more young.
More young.
Yeah. Coronavirus is also very young, but not quite. So please look up, guys, after our class, please look up the actual symptomology of SARS and corona. Okay? It seems that SARS was not spreading as rapidly as corona. Is that correct? SARS never became a pandemic, right? It was a localized epidemic. Is that more or less correct, nurses?
Yeah.
Okay. So that spreading, that is a more yin dimension. So that means the rapid spreading of corona means it's a more yin quality than just pure SARS. SARS is a much more contained condition. Now, have you been following the suspicions that epidemiologists have? Where did this virus originate? Kind of strange, really. Have you been following? We all know it's originated from animals.
Cats. I didn't know about the cats, but the Humane Society International, when it first came out, put out a petition to stop wildlife trade in China because they said that this outbreak occurred because of the proximity of all different types of wildlife together in their markets.
Yeah, which could have caused a novel virus to appear, right, Karen? New.
Yeah.
Kind of a hybrid of all of this, right? But the main suspicion among the animal world is bats. That. Okay? In the case of SARS and coronavirus. There was also another suspicion. This really strange looking creature called a pangolin. Have you ever seen this, the pangolin? I put a picture here for you. It's so ridiculous, funny looking.
It looks like an armadillo.
Yeah, it's actually an anteater. Scaly anteater. And, okay. And also, one of the earlier corona outbreaks was traced to a creature called a civet cat. C-I-V-E-T. And I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of that. It looks like a strange raccoon. It's actually not a cat. It's a member of the raccoon family. Okay? So, let me ask you guys, who would like to have a go at this? Are bats more yin or more yang in the animal world?
They're more young because they're very small.
They're cute? Are they cute, Donna, or not cute?
I think they're very cute.